So to start this week, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we understand the definition of communication. Sometimes I think we talk about communication, but we don't understand exactly what that means, or we might have a different idea of it in our minds. So let's take a look at the definition that we will be using for this class. Communication is a systemic process in which people interact with and through symbols to create and interpret meanings. Okay, and I know that sounds like a lot of mumble jumble, but I think what we'll do is just break down each part of it so we better understand. But it's a systemic process in which people interact with and through symbols to create and interpret meanings. Okay, so let's look at the first part of that, which is systemic. Systemic means interrelated parts that affect one another. That means that the parts of the system are interdependent and they continually interact. A change in any part changes the entire system. So I want you to just think about a system. One system that I can think of is a family. A family would be a system. And if one person in that family has a major change, let's say that one person, let's say that the father in the family gets very sick or, even passes away. One change in in one part of the system would then change the entire system. A really ill parent or, someone who would pass away, that would certainly change the entire system. Okay, so a family would be considered a system. There is this concept of open versus closed system. So an open system is a system where outside influences would change or affect that system. So for instance, a family is definitely an open system because the family is affected by what's going on outside of the family. So what's happening with the kids in school, what's happening with the adults at work, what's going on outside of the system and the environment would affect the system. In communication, there really aren't a lot of closed systems. It's hard to figure out a closed system, but I would say that one system that we might consider as closed is the mass media. So think about television. That would be, the TV reporters, they would be broadcasting the news into our homes every day or onto our computer screens every day. The mass media is not necessarily affected by the changes that are happening in my life, that are happening in the viewer's life. I mean, they are to some degree, but I would consider the mass media to be somewhat of a closed system, that relationship between the mass media and the people who are the audience. All right, so there is this concept of open versus closed system, and I want you to name some communication systems. So we've already talked about a family. Certainly a family is a communication system, where communication would take place. An athletic team. Some of you are members of athletic teams. So that's a system, and that's definitely an open system. It's very much affected by the environment, by what's happening in other systems, other teams. If another team, it's affected by outside influences. So an athletic team, a military unit, some of you I know might be in the military, and so that would be a communication system. An entire culture or a religion, that's a system. Many of us are part of we identify with a certain culture or a certain religion, and that is also a system. Okay, so communication takes place within a system. It's a systemic process. Okay, it takes place within a system. Now let's look at the process part of it. So we know what a system is, but a process is that communication is ongoing and dynamic. So really, you can't tell when communication starts and stops. If you remember in the first week of this course, I told you that it's impossible to not communicate. Communication is a process. It just sort of keeps going. It's constantly changing. It's influenced by what happened previously. And it's really difficult to tell when it starts or stops. So communication is a systemic process. It happens within a system, and it is an ongoing and dynamic process that's hard to tell when it starts and stops. Okay. Now let's talk about the next part of it. It's when we interact with and through symbols. So it's a systemic process in which one interacts with and through symbols. So symbols. we don't have direct access to each other's thoughts and feelings. You know, I can't just figure out what my husband is thinking, and you can't just figure out what your best friend or your teacher or your boss is thinking, you know. And I did put this in, unless we are Edward Cullen, for all my Twilight fans out there. Okay, Edward Cullen, if you don't know, is a character from the movie Twilight, and he can read other people's minds, but the rest of us can't. And since we don't have direct access to others' thoughts and feelings, we need symbols. Symbols represent people's thoughts and feelings, okay? So think about the word love. How do we symbolize love? I mean, we could say, I love you, okay? Just saying the verbal words, I love you, is a symbol. We are symbolizing our feeling of love, okay? We could give a diamond ring. So we could, you know, someone gives you a diamond ring, maybe gets down on a knee and proposes. That is a symbol of love. A diamond ring is a symbol of love. What about hugging and kissing? Hugging and kissing are symbols of love. You don't typically hug and kiss people that you don't love. Well, especially kissing. You know, you might hug your friends, but you still may love them in some way. Okay, so we have to use symbols to communicate, because we can't just you know, teleport our thoughts to other people, right? So communication involves symbols. So keep that in mind. It's a systemic process in which we communicate with and through symbols. And, you know, again, we could be saying, I love you. That is a symbol. And the final part is to create meaning, all right? So meaning is the significance we bestow on events or symbols. So what do these events, what do these symbols signify to us? What does a diamond ring signify to us? What about, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard, but you're talking about love, or have you ever gotten flowers on Valentine's Day, but maybe they were yellow instead of red? You know, red would symbolize love, but yellow might not symbolize love to some people, or it might symbolize friendship. And so meaning is a very important part of communication. And there's two levels of meaning. All right, there's the content level. The content level is the literal message, what was said. So my child can say, for instance, you know, I have two daughters, ages 10 and 12. It's challenging years raising these pre-teenagers. And, you know, they might say to me, Mom, whatever you want to do is fine, or I don't care, right? That what they say, the literal message, whatever you want to do is fine, or I don't care, that's fine with me. That would be the content level. They're saying they really don't care, or whatever I want to do is fine, all right? But then there is the relationship level, which expresses the relationship between two people. So my kids could say to me, you know, I really don't care. Whatever you want to do is fine. But I have a relationship with them where I understand them a little better, and their tone of voice, that can really communicate something different within our relationship. So what if they say, Mom, whatever, I really don't care. It's fine. All right. What they're saying is, it's fine. I really don't care. But what are they really saying within that? What are they really communicating? What meaning is there? All right. When they say, oh, Mom, I really don't care, whatever, it's just fine. They are really communicating, I don't agree. I don't like you. I don't think that what you're saying is right. I'm not interested. All right. So I think that we need to take into account the meaning. Okay. And is it at the content level? Is it the literal message? Or are we looking at it at the relationship level, where it's expressing the relationship between two people? And we need to be good communicators in that we can understand the difference between the two. Okay, so for instance, another example is, you know, and let's not even use this example. May I come in? Okay, let's use the example of your boss and your best friend. So if your best friend says, oh, whatever. Or if your best friend says, oh, shut up. Okay, let's say your best friend says, oh, shut up. Okay, so when your best friend says that, does she really want you to shut up? No, because she's your best friend. She's really saying, oh, get out, or I can't believe it, no way, right? But if your boss says, you know, Holly, shut up, your boss is probably meaning something different, because, you know, there's the content level of, you know, be quiet, I don't want you to say something. And there's the relationship level that you have with your best friend, and she can say, oh, shut up, but she really means something completely different than be quiet. All right, so I want you to keep that in mind. Okay, so let's just look at it one last time. Communication is a systemic process. It happens within a system. It's an ongoing process that's hard to tell when it starts and stops, in which people interact with and through symbols. Symbols are the way that we can communicate to create and interpret meanings. All right, so all of that is important to remember as we're working our way through this class.